Acorn and Cole just won the first FNCS of Chapter 5, cementing themselves as possibly the best duo in NA, but their journey here has had many ups and downs. So let's first go back to see how exactly Acorn got here. Just like most other top tier pros, Acorn's career began all the way back in Chapter 1. Now it's uncertain when he actually started playing for the first time, but we can assume it was quite early on, since right when online tournaments began in Season 7, he was already playing pretty much every single event. Now even though he was playing a lot, his placements were all over the place, from barely getting top 7,000 to placing top 100. But soon he was about to lock in because the Fortnite World Cup had just been announced, an opportunity for players to make hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. Long story short though, Acorn wouldn't qualify to play at the finals in New York. However, he did make over $1,600 in those qualifiers and got decently close to making it in the last week of duos, ending in 69th place. After the World Cup, FNCS had just been announced as a new major event every season, so obviously Acorn was getting prepared for it. However, he had some trouble finding teammates, but if he used a sponsor today's video, that wouldn't have been a problem. There's this community called tapin.gg, and they have been the go-to solution for getting the best teammates to play with. Stop playing with teammates that are toxic, trolls, or just not on your level. Tapin's teammates aren't just high-ranking, hand-verified champions, they're also super positive, friendly, and actually care about working together to win. These guys are the real deal with tons of reviews on Trustpilot, and they have a massive community on Discord. Plus, they're not only in Fortnite, but also League of Legends, Valorant, and CSGO. On top of that, there's more games coming soon. And all you gotta do is just make an account and find your teammate in under 30 seconds. You can use my link tapin.gg/aced or use code aced at the checkout, and they'll throw in 50% off of your first teammate. So if this sounds interesting to you or you want to help support me, go check them out today. But now let's get right back into the video. In Season X, he was able to place well in multiple trio and solo cash cups, but when it came time to FNCS, he would do well in the opens. However, those later rounds, he wouldn't be able to pull anything together. And the same would be said going into Chapter 2 Season 1 squads, where again, he would do well in some cash cups, but FNCS wouldn't go very well. With that being said though, this season was the first time he would win an event, that being a solo cash cup, earning himself $6,000. This was a great ending to that season, and little did he know, the next one would be his best by far. FNCS just switched to duos, and he decided to continue playing with his teammate from last season, Jack. Throughout the qualifiers, he'd placed 30th, 3rd, 9th, and 2nd, making it to his first ever semifinals, where once again he would do very well, placing 5th, officially qualifying to his first grand finals. And in the end, he would do extremely well considering it was his first time in grands, finishing in 10th. Even pulling through with a win in the 3rd game. It was at this point in his career where something would click. In the next couple seasons, he continued to pop off. Kind of. In that same season, there was the solo FNCS Invitationals where he'd make the grands, but he would place 87th. And in Season 3 solos, he would make it to the heats where unfortunately he would get 31st, just 1 point off of making the grand finals. It's worth noting though, throughout this time, he was placing in multiple cash cups. However, in Season 4 trios, he would bring things back in a huge way. For this FNCS, he would play with Jack and Slacks, and this would be the beginning of one of the best trios in NA ever. They would win multiple events throughout this season, and for FNCS, he'd have his best placement by far, going on to get a 5th. But little did he know, Season 5 would be where history was made. Acorn would end up getting a whole bunch of top 3s throughout the season, and when it came time to play FNCS, they were doing decently well, qualifying to the heats, where they'd end up winning, making another grand finals. But this time around, they were looking like the best trio out there, so there was only one way for them to really prove it.
Getting in here. I'm dead. I'm gonna get a kill.
Wait. I'll get so much. Nice. There's a kid in zone right now. It's coming up. It's fine.
Get a kill. AR. Dead.
I have no mask. Okay. He's rushing. Yep. RPG that. Spray.
I don't have mask.
Oh, dead.
For a shot.
Oh!
Right!
Leave it right here. Get him
Dead. Right here. Dead.
Behind
I'm dead.
Dennis.
for it.
Good stuff.
Acorn's trio would win by only 4 points, crowning him as the FNCS champ for the first time. You'd think coming off a win that next season they would do well again, but this wasn't the case. For some reason, they just couldn't put things together in the grands, finishing in 13th overall. At this point, most trios would split and go elsewhere, but this team was different. They knew that they had messed up, and now all they could do was learn from their mistakes. And well, that was exactly what they do, going on to place 5th in that very next season. By the way, if you're enjoying the video, make sure to subscribe, because only 5% of you watching actually are. Things were once again looking up for Acorn. But that didn't last for long when in Season 8, he would miss out on grands for the first time in an entire year. This really got him down, but he didn't have very long to think about it, because only 2 weeks after was the FNCS Grand Royale. And this time, they would go absolutely crazy, placing 3rd overall. Chapter 2 was definitely a massive roller coaster for Acorn, but none of that mattered because now we were entering into Chapter 3, where the FNCS game mode switched over to duos permanently. And throughout this chapter, he would play extremely well, getting a 6th in Season 1 with Kanata, then a 4th and 7th with Edgy in the seasons after. Because of these insanely good placements, he would get invited to play at the FNCS Invitationals, his first ever official Epic hosted LAN event. After the first day of the Invitationals, Acorn and Edgy were at the top of the leaderboard in 4th place. Unfortunately though, on day 2 they would slip up, only having one good game, which resulted in them ending in 13th. Still very good for his first LAN event. But now yet again we were at the end of the season, heading into Chapter 4, so you already know things were about to get shaken up. Starting off the season, Acorn decided to play with Dukes. However, that didn't last long when only a few weeks later he would start playing with Cold for the very first time, starting the reign of one of the best duos in the world. But now that we know how Acorn got here, let's once again go all the way back to see how Cold ended up here. Just like Acorn, Cold started playing competitively right when online tourneys began. But there was just one big difference. Acorn grinded almost every single event, where Cold only participated in a few of them. However, that grind would begin during the World Cup. Now in most of the qualifier weeks, he placed really poorly, except for week 4 of duos where he'd end in top 300, getting his first earnings. With his motivation at an all-time high, FNCS was announced just a few months later, and he really wanted to prove himself. And he'd go on the place in 2 weeks of the season X FNCS, but ultimately wouldn't be able to make the heats. But now we were going into a brand new chapter, and you'd think this would motivate him to continue grinding, but that wouldn't really happen. Over the next few seasons, he would place in a few Cash Cups, the Winter Royale, and Frosty Frenzy, but that was really it. As far as FNCS goes, in Season 1 through 3, he wouldn't even play all of the qualifying weeks. And it wasn't until Season 5 where he would see some improvements after making it to his first heats. But sadly, he just wouldn't perform good enough to make the grands. And that would repeat itself in Season 6 and 7, making the heats but just falling short there. Up until this point, people could tell Cold was a really good fighter, but when it came time to those big tournaments, he'd just flop. However, in the last season of Chapter 2, that was all about to change. A long time and established pro Cease was having a rough couple of seasons as well. And after seeing Cold's fragging ability, he knew this kid had potential. So he decided why not give Cold and his long-term duo Elite a chance. However, in the trio Cash Cups leading up to FNCS, they wouldn't play the best, which really made Cease's trio choice a questionable one. But they knew they were good, so now that FNCS was finally here, they had a chance to prove it. In the qualifiers, they'd only played 2 out of 3 of them, however, they did do just good enough to make it into the semifinals, where they needed a win in order to make Cold's first ever grand finals. And well, that's exactly what they do in game number 3, dropping a 6-kill win. For most players, their first time in the grand finals, you'd think they wouldn't have as good of a performance, especially considering how advanced the game had gotten throughout the years. But Cold's trio was different, having a very experienced pro on their side. And that would make a huge difference when they would go on to end in 6th place overall, earning himself $15,000. And that wasn't it for the season. Like I said earlier, there was also the Grand Royale, where once again he'd make the finals, placing 5th, this time earning $18,000. Cold could not have asked for a better way to end off the chapter, but little did he know, Chapter 3 would be where his life would change forever. To start things off, since it was duos, he needed to find a teammate. And to everyone's shock, he would end up playing with Scented, who at this point made hundreds of thousands of dollars off the game. A lot of people were shocked by this decision, especially considering it was only last season where he would make grands for the first time. But Scented knew Cold had potential, and they wouldn't disappoint. Cash Cups before FNCS, they were looking very good, getting multiple top 10s and even a few wins. And during it, they'd they'd breeze through the qualifiers, and in the grand finals, Sentin and Cold would place 5th once again, an insanely good streak so far. And it would continue into that next season with them getting a 2nd place, this time being super close to winning it altogether. Cold was doing something we haven't really seen before, getting 6th, 5th, 5th, and 2nd place. This wasn't just impressive because it was all back-to-back, but these tourneys were his only time ever playing in the grand finals. So heading into season 3, he obviously wanted to continue this pattern, but unfortunately that wouldn't happen since in the finals their off-spawn situation got a little bit scuffed, which resulted in a 25th place. This was definitely hard on Cold since, like I just said, he had been having increasingly good placements each season, but soon he was about to forget it all because he had just gotten the chance of a lifetime. That was the opportunity to compete at the FNCS Invitationals, Cold's first ever LAN event. In a nutshell, leading up to this event, they had some good placements, but only a few. And considering this time they weren't just going up against NA, but the top teams from every single region, it was very hard to say how well they'd do. In spite of that though, they would go on to place the best out of every single NA team, getting 3rd place, making them each $60,000. Cold was on top of the world. In just 1 year, he went from a nobody with a few $1,000s earned from the game to now having over $150,000 earned, and he was still only 15. But nobody could have prepared him what was about to come. At the beginning of Chapter 4, Sentin was split from Cold after finding himself in some controversy. So going into the rest of Season 1, he needed to find a new teammate. And that's where Cold and Acorn would unite for the first time. Now that we're all caught up on their separate journeys to get here, let's continue where we left off before. Acorn and Cold were looking really good right away after they got 3rd and 1st in the Elite Weekly Cups right before FNCS. Everything seemed to be falling in line, and when FNCS did start, they'd place 5th and 4th in weeks 2 and 3, unsurprisingly qualifying them straight into the grands. This season was already looking very good for them, but on top of it, they would end up winning that last Elite Weekly Cup right before the grand started. After proving themselves time and time again, they were easily one of the favorites to do well, but nobody was ready for the clinic they were about to put on in the finals.
Kill again. Look alive. Coming up. You can hammer. Dead in. Go, bro! I got it. Right here. Dead. Nice. Don't me. Turn it. Turn it. I think I have fight. Turn it. Let's go!
They would do it, winning FNCS, giving Cold his first ever win and Acorn his 2nd. Most importantly though, this meant they had officially qualified for the $4 million global championship at the end of this chapter. Now everything was looking great for them so far, but next season, nobody was ready for what was about to happen. Once again, they were looking super good heading into FNCS. And on day 1 of Grands, just like everybody expected, they were at the top of the leaderboard, in 2nd place, only 1 point from 1st. But on day 2, for some reason, they had just completely flopped, meaning that overall they would end in 6th place. To most duos, this placement would be extremely good, but to them, it was awful. In fact, it was so bad that Cold actually wanted to split from Acorn and instead try out with a new up-and-comer named Pollo. Now back then, this drama was huge, but to make a long story short, since they had already qualified to the global championship a couple months back, they actually missed the deadline to inform Epic that they were splitting. So essentially, in the end, all of this was for nothing. And as expected, the vibes on this duo just weren't good at all for the next few months. Eventually though, they were able to bring things back on track in time for FNCS during Season 3, where they get another 6th place. This time around, they were still disappointed in their performance, however, they were able to fix up their mindset just in time for the Global Championship, where once more they make the Grand Finals. Unfortunately for them though, their drop spot wasn't very good, but even to their surprise, somehow they came out with a 7th, making them $120,000. Now, Chapter 4 was a massive roller coaster for them, so heading into Chapter 5, nobody really knew if they were going to stick together as a duo. But ultimately, in the end, they would decide that they are very good together, so why not give it another shot? And this would be proved as a very good decision when they would win 2 out of the 4 duo cash cups leading up to FNCS. And when it eventually came, they didn't disappoint, getting a 4th and 65th in the 2 weeks of the open qualifiers, which meant they made it to the upper bracket semifinals, where they'd eventually qualify to the grand finals after getting a 10th in round 3. To nobody's shock, Acorn and Cold were one of the favorites to take it home, and this would be solidified when they would win the very last Duo Cash Cup before the finals began. However, there was one massive problem that could prevent them from having a good shot at winning. The entire season, they had been landing at fencing fields, attempting to play for the Mythic AR and Medallion, but they weren't the only ones. Npen, Mason, and Paper and Muzz were also dropping there, which meant 3 duos were at that 1 POI. But this is Acorn and Cold we're talking about, so they still have a very good shot, depending on how things went all spawn. So now it was finally time for the grand finals to begin, and to see who will be crowned as the first FNCS champion of Chapter 5. In the first 2 games, they started off amazing with a 2 kill second and 6 kill 6th, but match 3 they'd fall off pace getting a 21st. We were now halfway through day 1 and they were currently 5th on the leaderboard. This was good, but as you should know by now, they only want to stay in first the entire time, so they needed a big game here, and that's exactly what they would do.
I think I'm gonna play another. You have flops, yeah? 38. I'm gonna. That is 100. Spraying second. I'm just spraying second. One screen. Go! Let's go! Go! That's how we do it, bro.
Acorn and Cold with the 8 kill win bumped them up into first place. This was the best position they could have been in, so with 2 games left, they needed to keep up that momentum. However, that wouldn't happen in the following matches with them placing 15th and 12th. Not bad, but it would drop them down from 1st in the 3rd. Nonetheless, this still meant that they were in a very good position to win it all. Jumping on into day 2, they once again started off hot with the 7th, 12th, and 8th, where once more they'd find themselves in first place. However, the leaderboard was still extremely close, and with day 2 offering 1.5 times more points than the previous day, things could get messy quick. But Acorn and Cold knew they could take advantage of this, and in match number 10, they would make sure to stay on top.
100. Right. Nice. 100. Where's me? He's good. Right here. 75. Right. Yeah, block that one. 30 can jump. That's good. You jump. Right there. 1 speed. Nice, bro. Good job. Nice! Go! How we doing, bro?
Their second win of the weekend solidified them in first place once more, this time putting them almost 100 points ahead of second. Yet there's still 2 more games left, so anything could happen. In match 11, they would continue their streak of good games, coming through with an 8th. Checking back in on that leaderboard, they obviously were still in first, but this time by an even larger margin. At this point, everybody thought that there was almost no way they could lose, but in Acorn and Cold fashion, they would end it off with a bang.
Go now. So, can you get kill him? Or are you? 100. Oh, 1 HP, 51. Jump up. 100. That one. Spring in. 100, that. 1 is. Go! That's how we do it!
Even though they almost certainly had it in the bag, Acorn and Cold would end up winning the last game of FNCS, making this duo the 2x FNCS champs together. Throughout their time becoming pro players, I'm sure they played countless 1v1s, but I'm also sure that at times it got extremely boring. So in order to combat this, I just made gun game 1v1s. It is everything you love about the classic build battle, with the inclusion of swapping guns every single time you get an elimination, slowly making it harder and harder to advance until eventually you win. So if you're bored of normal 1v1s, come check out the map with the code, or just search up the map on your screen in creative. Thank you guys so much for watching till the end of the video, and if you enjoyed, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your days. Peace out.